The spirit of freedom, which pervades the feudal institutions, was felt in its strongest energy by the volunteers of the cross, who elected for their chiefs the most deserving of his peers. Amidst the slave of Asia, unconscious of the lessons or example, a model of political liberty was introduced, and the laws of the French kingdom are derived from the purest source of equality and justice. Of such laws, the first and indispensable condition is the assent of those whose obedience they required, and for whose benefit they are designed. No sooner had Godfrey of Bouillon accepted the office of supreme magistrate than he solicited the public and private advice from the Latin pilgrims, who were the best skilled in the statutes and customs of Europe. From these materials, with the counsels and approbation of the patriarch and barons, of the clergy and Latiny, Godfrey composed the Assizes of Jerusalem, a precious monument of feudal jurisprudence. The new code, attested by the seals of the king, the patriarch, and the viscounts of Jerusalem, was deposited in the Holy Sepulchre, enriched with the improvements of succeeding times, and respectfully consulted as often as any doubtful question arose in the tribunals of Palestine. With the kingdom and city all was lost. The fragments of the written law were preserved by jealous tradition and variable practice till the middle of the 13th century. The code was restored by the pen of John de Laban, Count of Jaffa, one of the principal feudatories, and the final revision was accomplished in the year 1369 for the use of the Latin kingdom of Cyprus. The justice and freedom of the Constitution were maintained by two tribunals of unequal dignity, which were instituted by Geoffrey of Bouillon after the conquest of Jerusalem. The king, in person, presided in the upper court, the court of the barons. Of these, the four most conspicuous were the Prince of Galilee, the Lord of Sidon and Caesarea, and the Counts of Jaffa and Tripoli, who, perhaps with the constable and marshal, were in a special manner the compeers and judges of each other. But all the nobles, who held their lands immediately of the crown, were entitled and bound to attend the king's court, and each baron exercised a similar jurisdiction on the subordinate assemblies of their own feudatories. The connection of lord and vassal were honorable and voluntary. Reverence was due to the benefactor, protection to the dependent. But they mutually pledged their faith to each other, and the obligation on the other side might be suspended by neglect or dissolved by injury. The cognizance of marriages and testaments were blended with religion and usurped by the clergy, but the civil and criminal causes of the nobles, the inheritance and tenure of their fiefs, formed the proper occupation of the Supreme Court. Each member was a judge and guardian of both public and private rights. It was his duty to assert with his tongue and sword the lawful claims of the Lord. But if an unjust superior presumed to violate the freedom or property of a vassal, the confederate peers stood forth to maintain his quarrel by word and deed. They boldly affirmed his innocence and his wrongs, demanded the restitution of his liberty or his lands, suspended, after a fruitless demand, their own service, rescued their brother from prison, and employed every weapon in his defense, without offering direct violence to the person of their lord, which was ever sacred in their eyes. In their pleadings, replies, and rejoinders, the advocates of the court were subtle and copious, but the use of argument and evidence was also superseded by judicial combat, and the Assizes of Jerusalem admitted many cases this barbarous institution, which had been slowly abolished by the laws and manners in Europe.